We are living through a transformation in the structure of human attention. For most of history, the greatest threats to survival were famine, plague, and war. Today, a new threat has emerged, quieter but equally powerful: the erosion of attention. The modern world does not starve the body as often as it starves the mind. It does not conquer territory, it colonizes consciousness. Never before have human beings been exposed to such a relentless stream of information. Billions of messages circulate every hour. News updates never sleep. Opinions multiply faster than facts. The average individual now consumes more information in a single day than many of our ancestors encountered in a lifetime. Yet paradoxically, the increase in information has not produced a proportional increase in understanding. Instead, it has generated noise. Noise is not simply sound. Noise is irrelevant, manipulative, or excessive information that overwhelms our cognitive capacity. Human brains evolved in environments where information was scarce and slow. A rustle in the bushes might signal danger. A change in the sky might predict weather. Attention was selective and precious because survival depended on filtering wisely. Today, the filtering mechanisms are outsourced to algorithms, whose primary objective is not your well-being, but your engagement. The system rewards intensity, not accuracy. Content that provokes anger, fear, or excitement spreads more rapidly than content that encourages reflection. Calm analysis struggles to compete with emotional stimulation. The result is a civilization saturated with signals yet starving for clarity. When everything demands attention, nothing truly receives it. Clarity has become rare not because truth has disappeared, but because silence has disappeared. To think clearly requires time, patience, and mental space. But modern systems monetize interruption. Each notification fragments the mind. Each headline competes for urgency. Each trend pressures individuals to respond immediately rather than thoughtfully. Reaction replaces reflection. The wisest individuals recognize this dynamic. They understand that constant exposure to noise reshapes the brain. Neuroscience shows that repeated distraction weakens the capacity for sustained focus. Attention becomes shallow, fragmented, reactive. Over time, the ability to engage in deep thinking diminishes. This is not a moral failure. It is a biological response to environmental conditions. Consider the implication. Complex problems, climate change, artificial intelligence, economic inequality cannot be understood through fragmented attention. They require long chains of reasoning, historical context, and interdisciplinary thinking. If society loses its capacity for depth, it loses its capacity for solutions. The age of noise is therefore not merely inconvenient. It is dangerous. But within this environment, a counter-movement emerges. Some individuals choose to step back. They limit exposure. They cultivate silence. This is not an act of ignorance, but an act of preservation. They understand that clarity is an asset more valuable than information. In a marketplace flooded with opinions, discernment becomes power. Clarity is not simply knowing facts. It is the ability to distinguish signal from noise. It is the discipline to question sources. It is the patience to withhold judgment until evidence accumulates. It is the courage to say, "I do not know," in a culture that rewards instant certainty. Such qualities require mental stability, and stability requires boundaries. The age of clarity does not mean rejecting technology. It means mastering its influence. Tools are not inherently harmful unconscious usages. The same networks that spread misinformation can also distribute knowledge. The same devices that distract can also educate. The determining factor is intention. Without intention, attention is captured. With intention, attention becomes directed. Historically, power belonged to those who controlled resources. Today, those who control flows of information shape perception. And perception shapes reality. If millions believe something to be true, it influences markets, elections, and social movements regardless of its factual basis. Therefore, protecting one's mental environment becomes a civic responsibility as much as a personal one. In the age of noise, silence is not emptiness. It is infrastructure. It is the foundation upon which understanding is built. When individuals deliberately create spaces free from constant input, they allow ideas to mature. Reflection transforms data into wisdom. Without reflection, information remains raw and volatile. The paradox of our time is that access to knowledge has never been greater, yet the ability to synthesize it has rarely been weaker. Knowledge requires connection, connecting past to present, cause to effect, action to consequence. Noise disrupts these connections by accelerating tempo. Speed compresses complexity into slogans. Nuance disappears under pressure for immediacy. The wisest people sense this compression and resist it. They choose long-form reading over fragmented snippets. They engage in sustained dialogue rather than rapid exchanges. They protect hours of uninterrupted thought. In doing so, they cultivate a cognitive advantage. They see patterns where others see chaos. Clarity does not emerge spontaneously. It must be engineered internally. Just as societies build physical infrastructure, roads, bridges, power grids, individuals must build mental infrastructure. Habits of focus, critical thinking, and introspection form this structure. Without it, external noise penetrates easily. With it, external noise is filtered. This brings us to a second dimension of withdrawal, the experience of isolation among intelligent individuals in contemporary society. Intelligence today often produces discomfort rather than status. Those who examine systems critically may find themselves alienated from dominant narratives. When public discourse is polarized and emotionally charged, nuance appears suspicious. Moderate voices are dismissed as weak. Complex explanations are criticized as evasive. Intelligent individuals perceive contradictions. They recognize oversimplification. They see how economic incentives shape media narratives, how political incentives shape public statements, how technological incentives shape behavior. Such awareness can create distance from mainstream enthusiasm. When crowds celebrate immediate gratification, those who value long-term consequences may feel out of place. Isolation, in this context, is not necessarily social withdrawal but cognitive separation. It is the realization that participating fully in prevailing patterns may require intellectual compromise. Many choose not to compromise. They reduce engagement not because they despise society but because they seek integrity. Throughout history, thinkers who question dominant paradigms often experience isolation. Scientific revolutions rarely began with majority approval. Philosophical breakthroughs often emerged from individuals willing to think independently. Today, independent thinking can feel even more isolating because digital platforms amplify conformity through metrics likes, shares, followers. Popularity becomes visible in real time. Deviating from majority sentiment carries immediate social costs. The psychological pressure to conform is ancient. Humans evolved as social animals. Belonging increased survival chances. Rejection threatened existence. Modern environments exploit this evolutionary vulnerability. Social feedback loops trigger dopamine responses. Approval becomes addictive. Disapproval becomes painful. In such systems, speaking uncomfortable truths requires resilience. The wisest individuals understand these mechanisms. They recognize that emotional discomfort does not necessarily indicate error. Sometimes it indicates independence. Withdrawing from constant social validation reduces the influence of these pressures. It allows beliefs to be evaluated based on evidence rather than applause. However, this withdrawal can produce loneliness. When conversations remain superficial and driven by trends, deeper discussions become rare. Intelligent individuals may struggle to find spaces for meaningful exchange. Yet, this challenge also presents opportunity. It encourages the creation of smaller, intentional communities grounded in inquiry rather than performance. Intelligence, properly understood, is not accumulation of facts but adaptability of thought. It is the capacity to update beliefs when presented with new evidence. In highly polarized environments, updating beliefs is interpreted as weakness. Changing one's mind may be seen as betrayal. Consequently, rigid certainty dominates discourse. Those who value flexibility may step back from arenas where rigidity prevails. Withdrawal, therefore, becomes a strategy for preserving cognitive flexibility. It creates room for slow thinking in a fast-thinking world. Psychologists distinguish between rapid, intuitive judgments and slower, analytical reasoning. Both have value. But when rapid judgments dominate continuously, analytical reasoning deteriorates. Intelligent individuals sense this imbalance and seek environments that restore equilibrium. Isolation can also emerge from awareness of global challenges. Understanding the scale of ecological degradation, technological disruption, and geopolitical tension can be overwhelming. While many cope through denial or distraction, those who confront realities directly may experience existential weight. Stepping back from constant exposure becomes a means of maintaining psychological health. Importantly, withdrawal does not imply superiority. It reflects sensitivity. Just as certain organisms respond acutely to environmental toxins, certain minds respond acutely to informational toxicity. Sensitivity can be a burden, but it can also be strength. It enables early detection of problems. It fosters empathy. It encourages foresight. The challenge is transforming isolation into insight rather than cynicism. When intelligent individuals disengage entirely, society loses valuable perspectives. But when they withdraw, strategically reducing noise, while maintaining purpose, they preserve energy for meaningful contribution. Depth requires conservation. In a culture that equates visibility with value, choosing invisibility can feel counterintuitive. Yet, many transformative ideas germinate away from public attention. Intellectual breakthroughs often require solitude. Emotional maturity often develops in reflection. By stepping back from constant exposure, individuals protect the conditions necessary for growth. The age of noise rewards reaction. The age of clarity rewards reflection. Intelligent withdrawal is not abandonment of society, it is recalibration of engagement. It is recognition that to contribute wisely, one must first think clearly. And to think clearly in the modern world requires deliberate separation from forces designed to fragment the mind. We are entering a phase of human history in which the greatest vulnerability is not physical weakness but cognitive fragmentation. In previous centuries, power was exercised by controlling territory, food supplies, and labor. Today, power increasingly operates by shaping perception, and perception is shaped by attention. When attention is fragmented, perception becomes distorted. When perception is distorted, freedom becomes fragile. The digital revolution promised unlimited access to information. What it delivered was unlimited competition for attention. Every platform is designed not simply to inform you, but to capture you. The architecture of the modern digital environment is not neutral. It is engineered around psychological triggers refined through data analysis of billions of behavioral patterns. Each click, pause, and swipe feeds back into systems that learn how to hold you longer. The goal is not your understanding. The goal is your engagement. This has profound consequences. For most of human evolution, attention was guided by immediate survival needs. You focused on threats, food, social bonds. Now, your nervous system reacts to abstract stimuli, numbers on a screen, opinions of strangers, carefully curated images. The ancient brain confronts a hypermodern environment. It was not designed for endless novelty. Yet novelty is precisely what drives digital platforms. Every scroll promises something new, something urgent, something emotionally stimulating. The result is a perpetual state of low-grade distraction. You rarely descend into deep thought because you are continuously interrupted. Even when no notification arrives, the possibility of one hovers in your awareness. Anticipation itself fragments concentration. Over time, this weakens your capacity for sustained focus. And without sustained focus, complex thinking deteriorates. The most dangerous effect is not that you know less. It is that you think less deeply. Superficial familiarity replaces genuine understanding. Headlines replace analysis. Reactions replace reflection. In such an environment, wisdom becomes rare not because information is scarce, but because attention is scattered. The wisest individuals recognize this structural shift. They understand that distraction is not merely a personal failing, it is an economic model. If a platform is free, your attention is the product. The longer you remain emotionally engaged, the more valuable you become to advertisers and data brokers. Anger and fear extend engagement. Calm reasoning shortens it. Therefore, outrage spreads more efficiently than nuance. When you feel compelled to react instantly to every development, you are participating in a system that rewards impulsivity. Yet complex realities require patience. Political conflicts, technological transformations, ecological crises, none of these can be understood through rapid emotional responses. They demand context. They demand sustained inquiry. And sustained inquiry demands focus. This is why intelligent withdrawal emerges as a rational strategy. It is not about abandoning society. It is about refusing to surrender your cognitive autonomy. To withdraw is to create boundaries around your attention. It is to decide deliberately what deserves your mental energy. Historically, forms of withdrawal have always accompanied periods of upheaval. Philosophers retreated from political turmoil to cultivate thought. Scientists isolated themselves to conduct experiments. Artists sought solitude to create. Withdrawal has often preceded innovation. Not because isolation is inherently superior, but because deep work requires insulation from noise. Today, the noise is amplified beyond precedent. You carry it in your pocket. You sleep beside it. It awakens with you. To withdraw, therefore, requires conscious discipline. It may mean limiting exposure to algorithmically curated feeds. It may mean scheduling periods of uninterrupted study. It may mean tolerating boredom rather than anesthetizing it with constant stimulation. Boredom, in fact, is a misunderstood cognitive state. When external stimuli decrease, the mind begins to wander internally. Connections form between distant ideas. Creativity often emerges in such moments. Yet modern culture treats boredom as an emergency to be eliminated instantly. The moment silence appears, we fill it. But in eliminating boredom, we also eliminate the incubation period of insight. Withdrawal restores that incubation. It allows thoughts to mature rather than being replaced every few seconds. It strengthens the neural circuits associated with sustained attention. Over time, this cultivates resilience against manipulation. When you can focus deeply, you are less reactive. When you are less reactive, you are harder to control. This has political implications. Democracies rely on citizens capable of evaluating information critically. If attention spans shrink and emotional volatility increases, public discourse deteriorates. Simplistic narratives dominate because they require less cognitive effort. Complex trade-offs are ignored because they demand patience. Withdrawal, in this sense, becomes a civic responsibility. By strengthening your capacity for depth, you contribute to a healthier intellectual ecosystem. There is also a personal dimension. Constant digital engagement fragments identity. You present curated versions of yourself across platforms. You compare your internal experience to others. External highlights. This generates subtle dissatisfaction. You measure worth through metrics like shares, followers. But metrics quantify visibility, not value. The wisest individuals step back from this metric-driven psychology. They understand that meaning cannot be optimized like engagement rates. Meaning develops through sustained relationships, long-term projects, and inner coherence. These require time free from interruption. To withdraw is to reclaim time. And time is the fundamental resource of existence. Each moment spent reacting automatically is a moment not spent choosing deliberately. The difference between reaction and choice defines the boundary between manipulation and autonomy. Consider how rapidly technological systems evolve. Artificial intelligence increasingly predicts preferences, suggests decisions, and automates tasks. Prediction relies on patterns. If your behavior is predictable, it becomes easier to influence. But unpredictability emerges from reflection. When you pause and examine your impulses before acting, you disrupt automated prediction models. Reflection introduces freedom. Intelligent withdrawal cultivates that pause. It inserts space between stimulus and response. In that space, agency resides. This does not imply rejecting technology. Technology is neither inherently liberating nor inherently oppressive. Its impact depends on how it is integrated into human life. Withdrawal simply ensures that integration is conscious rather than compulsive. It transforms tools from masters into instruments. Education must adapt to this reality. Memorizing information matters less when data is instantly accessible. The critical skill is discerning which information deserves attention. Discernment requires a trained mind. A trained mind requires uninterrupted practice. Thus, withdrawal becomes a form of education in itself. In practical terms, this might involve deep reading. Long-form texts train concentration differently than fragmented posts. They demand sustained engagement with complex arguments. They expose you to perspectives beyond algorithmic bubbles. Over time, this strengthens cognitive endurance. It might involve extended conversations without digital interruption. Human dialogue fosters empathy and nuance. Unlike online exchanges, it cannot be easily reduced to slogans. It develops patience. It might involve contemplative practices that heighten awareness of mental processes. By observing thoughts without immediately acting on them, you reduce impulsivity. This enhances emotional stability. These practices are not escapes from modernity. They are adaptations to it. Just as earlier generations developed literacy to navigate print culture, we must develop attentional literacy to navigate digital culture. The irony is that withdrawal often increases effectiveness in engagement. When you choose your moments deliberately, your contributions carry more weight. Instead of scattering energy across countless debates, you invest in areas aligned with your values and expertise. Focus amplifies impact. There is also an evolutionary perspective. Human cognition evolved in small groups with limited information flow. Trust networks were stable. Today, you encounter global narratives instantly. Your brain processes distant conflicts as immediate threats. This constant exposure elevates stress. Withdrawal regulates input to levels compatible with psychological well-being. Stress impairs reasoning. Chronic distraction elevates stress. Therefore, withdrawal enhances reasoning indirectly by reducing cognitive overload. Clear thinking requires calm physiology. The broader trajectory of civilization suggests increasing complexity. Systems interconnect globally. Small actions produce cascading effects. Navigating such complexity demands integrative thinking. Integrative thinking demands concentration. Concentration demands boundaries. Thus, the wisest individuals withdraw not because they reject the world, but because they wish to understand it more deeply. They recognize that depth cannot coexist with perpetual distraction. They accept short-term social invisibility in exchange for long-term clarity. In an era that equates visibility with significance, choosing partial invisibility becomes radical. It shifts value from being seen to seeing clearly. And clarity, though less immediately rewarded, compounds over time. As technological acceleration continues, the temptation to surrender attention will intensify. Systems will become more immersive, more personalized, more persuasive. The challenge will not be accessing information, but preserving cognitive sovereignty. Withdrawal is the first step in that preservation. It is a declaration that your mind is not an open marketplace. It is a commitment to depth in a culture of speed. It is an investment in the long arc of understanding rather than the short pulse of reaction. And in the decades ahead, as societies confront unprecedented transformation, those who have cultivated focus will navigate uncertainty with greater stability. They will discern patterns others overlook. They will resist manipulation others accept. They will contribute insight where others generate noise. The wisest people are not abandoning the future. They are preparing their minds to meet it. We are living through a strange paradox. Never in history have human beings been more connected, and never have they been more fragmented. Billions of people carry in their pockets devices that grant access to almost all recorded knowledge, yet sustained attention has become rare. We know more facts, but we struggle to build wisdom. We communicate constantly, but we rarely encounter silence. And in this environment, something remarkable is happening. Some of the most perceptive individuals are stepping back. To understand this withdrawal, we must first understand the age we inhabit. For most of history, information was scarce. Power belonged to those who could access it: priests, kings, scholars. Today, information is abundant beyond measure. Every minute, more data is produced than entire civilizations generated in centuries. The challenge is no longer access to information. The challenge is filtering it. When everything demands your attention, the ability to choose what deserves, it becomes the defining skill of intelligence. Yet the digital architecture surrounding us is not designed to strengthen that skill. It is designed to exploit cognitive vulnerabilities. Human attention evolved in environments where sudden movement or loud signals often meant danger or opportunity. Now, those same neurological mechanisms are constantly triggered by notifications, headlines, and algorithmic recommendations. The system is optimized not for truth, not for depth, but for engagement. And engagement often favors outrage over nuance, speed over reflection, certainty over doubt. The most thoughtful people sense this distortion. They notice that constant stimulation erodes clarity. They observe that reacting to every controversy fragments the mind. They recognize that when attention is endlessly divided, meaningful thought becomes nearly impossible. So they withdraw not in despair, but in defense. In a culture that equates visibility with value, choosing invisibility becomes an act of quiet rebellion. This withdrawal is frequently misunderstood. It is interpreted as cynicism or disengagement. But in reality, it is often a deliberate strategy. Throughout history, periods of profound insight have required distance from noise. Philosophers retreated from cities to think. Scientists isolated themselves to conduct experiments. Artists sought solitude to create. What we are witnessing today is not escapism. It is an attempt to preserve the conditions necessary for deep cognition. Consider the transformation of public discourse. Complex issues are compressed into short statements designed to provoke immediate emotional reactions. Subtlety is punished because it does not spread as efficiently. Doubt is interpreted as weakness, but real understanding is slow. It requires holding contradictory ideas in tension. It requires patience. When discourse becomes accelerated beyond the speed of thought, wisdom suffocates. The wisest individuals understand that depth cannot survive in an environment of perpetual urgency. So they slow down. They choose long-form reading over fragmented scrolling. They prioritize sustained projects over constant updates. They invest in skills that require concentration. This is not nostalgia for a simpler past. It is adaptation to a hyper-stimulated present. There is also a deeper psychological dimension. Constant exposure to global crisis creates a sense of continuous alarm. Our ancestors evolved to respond to immediate threats in their surroundings. Today, we are exposed to tragedies from every continent in real time. The nervous system is not designed to process such scale. Chronic anxiety becomes normalized. Emotional exhaustion becomes widespread. In such circumstances, stepping back is not indifference. It is self-preservation. Withdrawal allows space for reflection. Reflection allows space for discernment. And discernment, essential in an era when reality itself feels unstable. Technologies capable of generating synthetic images, voices, and narratives are advancing rapidly. Personalized information ecosystems create parallel perceptions of truth. When every individual inhabits a customized reality, social cohesion weakens. The ability to question one's own assumptions becomes critical. The wisest individuals recognize that the greatest threat is not misinformation alone, but the erosion of inner stability. When your emotions are constantly manipulated, when your attention is constantly redirected, you become reactive rather than deliberate. Withdrawal is a method of restoring agency. It is the decision to respond instead of react. This does not imply disengagement from the world's problems. On the contrary, meaningful engagement requires clarity. If you are perpetually overwhelmed, your capacity to contribute effectively diminishes. Strategic distance enables strategic action. By narrowing the range of inputs, you increase the quality of outputs. By protecting your attention, you strengthen your ability to think critically. There is also an economic dimension to this phenomenon. The modern economy increasingly trades in attention. Companies compete not only for money, but for minutes and seconds of cognitive focus. The more time you spend within digital platforms, the more predictable your behavior becomes. Predictability is profitable. In such a system, reclaiming your attention challenges powerful incentives. Choosing to disconnect, even partially, disrupts the cycle. Historically, revolutions often involved seizing physical infrastructure, roads, factories, institutions. Today, the infrastructure of influence is psychological. It operates through patterns of attention and emotion. The most profound transformation may not require external upheaval, but internal recalibration. When individuals consciously decide where to direct their minds, they reshape the informational landscape. Education, therefore, must evolve. It is no longer sufficient to accumulate knowledge. Machines can store and retrieve information more efficiently than humans. The essential human advantage lies in interpretation, ethical reasoning, and sustained concentration. These capacities deteriorate when fragmented by constant interruption. The wisest individuals understand that protecting attention is not merely a personal preference. It is preparation for a future in which cognitive depth distinguishes human contribution from algorithmic output. Artificial intelligence will increasingly perform analytical tasks once reserved for experts. Automation will transform labor markets. In such a world, superficial skills lose value quickly. What remains valuable is the ability to synthesize disparate ideas, to imagine possibilities beyond existing data, to exercise judgment grounded in self-awareness. The abilities flourish in environments of focus, not distraction. Withdrawal also fosters self-knowledge. Without constant external input, individuals confront their own thoughts. This can be uncomfortable. Distraction often serves as avoidance. But insight requires introspection. Societies change when individuals understand themselves, when they recognize biases, fears, motivations. The wisest people are willing to face this internal complexity. There is a long historical pattern in which periods of rapid technological change create instability. The printing press disrupted religious authority. Industrialization disrupted social structures. Today, as digital revolution disrupts cognition itself, each transformation generates anxiety and resistance. But it also creates opportunities for those capable of adaptation. Withdrawal in this context is not regression. It is recalibration to new conditions. The paradox is that by stepping back, these individuals often become more effective participants in society. Because they are less reactive, their contributions are more measured. Because they are less entangled in constant comparison, their creativity is less constrained. Because they are less driven by immediate validation, their work is oriented toward long-term impact. Focus becomes a scarce resource, and scarcity increases value. When most people are dispersed across countless stimuli, the person capable of sustained attention gains disproportionate influence. This is not a mystical principle, it is a cognitive one. Deep work produces insights that shallow engagement cannot. Strategic thinking emerges from concentrated effort. At the same time, withdrawal demands responsibility. Isolation can become detachment. Reflection can become complacency. The challenge is balance engagement without absorption, awareness without overwhelm. The wisest individuals navigate this tension deliberately. They design environments that support clarity. They choose relationships that encourage growth. They cultivate habits that reinforce stability. Ultimately, the question is not whether to participate in the modern world. Participation is inevitable. The question is how. Will your attention be directed by external algorithms or by internal priorities? Will your emotions be triggered automatically or examined thoughtfully? Will your identity be shaped by trending narratives or by conscious values? The withdrawal we observe is not a rejection of humanity. It is a rejection of unexamined influence. It is an affirmation that the mind deserves protection. In an age where every second is contested, choosing where to place attention becomes an ethical act. History suggests that civilizations thrive when individuals cultivate both knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge accumulates rapidly in our era. Wisdom requires intention. It requires silence amid noise, patience amid urgency, and discernment amid abundance. The wisest people are not abandoning the world. They are preparing to meet it with clarity. They understand that the future will not be shaped solely by technological capacity, but by the quality of human consciousness guiding that capacity. And consciousness flourishes where attention is deliberate, where thought is deep, and where withdrawal is not escape, but strength. In the end, the real question is not whether the world is becoming louder, faster, and more overwhelming. It clearly is. The real question is whether you will allow that noise to define your inner world. History does not remember those distracted generations. It remembers those who understood their moment and responded with clarity. Every era tests humanity in a different way. Ours tests our attention. The wisest people are not withdrawing because they have given up. They are withdrawing because they have understood. They know that if you cannot govern your own mind, someone else will. They know that depth requires distance and clarity requires courage. In a time when everyone is reacting, the ability to remain composed becomes extraordinary. In a time when everyone is speaking, the ability to listen becomes powerful. In a time when everyone is connected, the ability to stand alone becomes strength. You do not need to disappear from the world. You need to re-enter it on your own terms. Protect your attention. Guard your time. Think deeply. Act deliberately. The future will not belong to the loudest voices, but to the clearest minds. And clarity is a choice you make every single day. Thank you to all my viewers and my audience for giving your time and your attention, because attention is the most valuable resource of our age. If you choose to invest it wisely, you do not just change your own life, you quietly change the world.
I read in an interview that you gave The Guardian, they asked you the greatest regret of your life. And you said not being open about your sexuality earlier.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Why it's my biggest regret?
Yes.
Or why? Because I think that the pain of kind of living in denial to myself. I mean, when I say it's a regret not coming out, it's not to other people, it's to myself. And looking back, the writing was on the wall when I was like 14, 15 for sure. Like if I would be on the beach, I would definitely look at the guys, not at the girls. But I couldn't acknowledge it. Like I had a divided mind. That one part of the mind knew absolutely 100%, and the other part of the mind had absolutely no idea. And again, it was just too much to handle, I guess. But this situation of living in denial and in repression of myself, just looking back, it was a lot of painful years.
What I try to do in all my works is help people understand themselves, help people understand reality better. It's a very delicate job because people usually rush to judge reality and to judge history, to judge the past and the present. We want to know who are the good guys and who are the bad guys, whether things are good or bad. When we rush to judge things, we don't have time to understand them. In my writing, I try to write history without villains, without good guys and bad guys, but to understand the deep process of change. And I sometimes think about history maybe as a kind of collective therapy. If you only give a company or an algorithm the goal of increasing production, which in social media means increasing engagement, produce more time spent on the platform, this will not regulate itself. And here we need intervention of government to regulate it. And the two most obvious regulations, first of all, companies should be liable for the actions of their algorithms. The companies constantly try to confuse people by saying this is against free speech. The government wants us to censor our users. And this is, I think, deliberate obfuscation, deliberate confusion. The issue is not what the users are doing. The issue is what the algorithms of the company are doing. If somebody publishes a hate-filled conspiracy theory, at least my personal opinion is that except in very extreme circumstances, it should not be censored and the person should not be punished. The problem is not with the human being who published this hate-filled post. The problem is that the Facebook algorithm or the TikTok algorithm now takes this post and deliberately shows it to millions of other people because it assumes that it will increase engagement. This is the problem.